I don't know why, but it seems, this is in general, it seems for me easier to experience sadness than to experience joy.
So let's say you're in San Francisco and you get in your car, you're at the top of the hill, and you decide that you're going to find out what momentum is. So you release the parking brake and take your car out of gear, and you just nudge your car just a little bit. And it just rolls down that hill. The momentum of it, if you decide you're going to stop it, you wouldn't want to be at the bottom of the hill trying to stop it, because you're not going to stop it. Momentum is a powerful thing. And that's all you're describing. You got to catch it in the earlier stages. Because once momentum is going, in other words, you might say, yeah, I pushed my car from the top of a hill, and it's just easier to let it go right into the bay than to try to stop it. And we say, yes, because that's a law of physics. And the law of physics is rampantly involved in law of attraction. It's all about physics. It's all about inertia. It's all about movement. It's all about momentum. There isn't anything in the laws of physics that isn't all wrapped up in law of attraction. That's what it all is about, you see. And we're not asking you to defy the laws of physics, and we're not asking you to defy the law of attraction. We would encourage you, when your car starts to roll a little bit at the top of the hill, that you get out in front of it and you stop it when it's easy to stop. We wouldn't ask you to do otherwise. Stop it when it's easy to stop. And some of those thoughts are easy to stop. And sometimes you sort of wallow in them, and then there's momentum, and then for sure it's easier to think those thoughts. For sure it is. You're not making it up. For sure it is. But the question isn't what's easier, because law of attraction answers that question every day. It's not what's easier, it's what feels better. That's the question you got to ask. So, Abraham, it's so much easier for me to think thoughts that don't feel good than to think thoughts that do feel good. Well, we get that because your habit of thought is causing that to happen. But if we ask you the question, which feels the best, you'd give a totally different answer. And if you really believe that you have no choice other than to feel bad, then we've got nothing for you. But if you start believing, hey, I can feel a little better, I can choose a little better thought, I can start my day off a little better, I can tune into my inner being because I've found no thought, and then I can let my inner being wean me off the negative thoughts and wean me on to the better feeling thoughts. Because your inner being will. Your inner being knows so many wonderful things about your future relationship, but you can't hear it. You've got your tuner tuned to a different channel, you see. So we're weaving in and out. We're wanting to give you the laws of physics, and we're wanting to talk to you about law of attraction, and we're wanting to talk about that different point of view that your inner being wants, and we're asking you to use your guidance system. And we know that you sort of kind of know all of this, but the bottom line is, if you want to feel bad, keep thinking those thoughts. And if you want to feel good, stop thinking those thoughts. And if it's hard to stop thinking those thoughts, then go to sleep. And if it's hard to stop thinking those thoughts, then meditate. And if it's hard to stop thinking those thoughts, then go to sleep again. And if it's hard to stop thinking those thoughts, then meditate again. And if it's hard to stop thinking those thoughts, then go to sleep. And it's hard to stop thinking those thoughts, then meditate. And after a little while, it won't be hard to stop thinking those thoughts. But if every day you think those thoughts and every day you don't feel good, then every day it's going to be easy to think the thoughts that don't feel good. And so you just got to ask your question. It's like, I don't know how it got started, but I started hitting myself with the hammer. I don't know how it got started. It doesn't feel good, but it's easier to keep doing it than to stop. And we say, really? You say, yeah, really? It's a lot easier to keep doing this than to stop. And we say, well, really? Yeah, it's easier. It's easier. Now that seems ridiculous. And so does this. It seems ridiculous. It seems ridiculous. It's like, I have no control over my thoughts. That's not even close to true. Or I only have one thing to think about and it sucks. That's not close to true either.
What about things that make me feel good, but maybe they're bad for me? You know, let's say I enjoy eating. Maybe I eat too much.
Yeah. You should just get in that car and release the brake and let it. It takes some sorting out, doesn't it? We get it, that always from the beginning of our offering, someone would give us a worst case scenario because we're asking them to find something good to feel about. And they'd say, well, how can you feel good when this is happening, or this is happening, or this is happening, or this is happening? We say, you have to start gaining control when it's easy. And when you have something that's really, really bothering you, that's usually not the best subject to start trying to gain control about. Do you believe that law of attraction is a real thing?
Yes.
And do you believe that your inner being is a real being?
Yes.
And do you believe that your inner being has interest in you being happy?
Definitely.
And do you believe that your inner being thinks the thoughts that are the most conducive to your ongoing happiness?
Yes.
And do you believe that sometimes you tap into those thoughts?
Yes.
And do you believe that sometimes you're not tapped into them?
Right.
And do you know that your emotions tell you the difference between whether you are or you aren't? And do you believe that sometimes it's easier for you to choose good feeling thoughts than others? So that's what the process is. Just do your best to feel as good as you can feel when you can feel it. It's like sometimes, don't you find yourself visiting with someone and you know you could help them, but they just can't hear you? And don't you sometimes just walk away knowing that another hour of conversation isn't going to make it better? And the same thing is true with you. We didn't mean, we don't have another hour, first of all. We didn't mean that we can't make it better, because it's always better when you visit with us. It's always better because we know who you are and we know what you want, and we know what words you're more likely to hear and what words you're not likely to hear. And we're willing to keep talking until we feel some movement in your vibration. But sometimes when you're visiting with another person, can't you tell sometimes that you're just getting nowhere? Well, sometimes with your own thought, it's just better to just shut it down. Just stop thinking about it. But the thing about, I'm not going to think about that anymore, that's not a good advice, because you're thinking about the thing that you're not going to think about while you're thinking about not thinking about it. And so it's still got momentum. In fact, the harder you try not to think about it, the more you think about it. So you have to find other things to think about. There has to be more to your life than this. And we know sometimes you get into these relationships. Esther had a relationship with Jerry like that, where they were so intertwined in so many different ways, it felt like everything was related to that relationship. But she had to find a way to think outside that relationship, because she was now outside that relationship as it had once been. And the thing that carried her through those difficult times was finding a glimpse of something that felt good, and then just riding that for a little while until it became more dominant and 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 more dominant. The thing that you don't realize, and we want so much for you to hear it, is all of these delicious relationships that you have, at the heart of the deliciousness in them is your inner being, who is still here. The reason that you are so in love with someone is because you're focused in alignment with your source, and you're letting the love of your source focus through you toward them. So even though they have gone, the love of your source has not gone. The love of your source is still there for you to focus on the flower and on the dog and on the ocean and on the seminar and on the people and on the food, even on the food. You see. So you can't get this wrong if your quest is to feel good, and you can't get it right unless your quest is to feel good.
Thank you.
Yeah.